For those rewatching, we're going to talk about the difference between tarot, oracle, Lenormand, kind of all of that. So, get to the bottom of the differences for cartomancy, different card readings. I'll also show off some of the decks that I have just because I have them. But mainly we'll be focusing on like what the differences are because that's a question I get a lot with people in the store. I feel like I'm a pretty good person to answer this because I do offer readings here as well as an employee here. So definitely, like I said, get asked this quite a bit. And then also if anybody has like questions for how to read these or like how you would interpret them, feel free to put that in the comments because I do use all three of these types in my actual reading. So I can try and help with interpretation and stuff like that. I did also bring my grimoire so I can go through a couple Lenormand spreads that I use when I'm reading. So yeah, but I also brought this little infographic here. We do have this at the store. In case, you forget what I said and you wanted to see what the differences were, feel free to read it. But I'm going to start off with the tarot. So the tarot cards always have 78 cards. Sometimes in different ones, they'll like add a one-off or something to add it or change the names of them. But for the most part, you're going to have the 22 major arcana, and they are always going to follow the same pattern. It's the same 22 majors. And it starts with the Fool and ends with the World. So that's why you hear a lot of tarot readers call it the Fool's Journey. Because it's talking about the Fool, that blank slate, and then working towards the World, which is the completion of a cycle. And then the other part too is we'll go through multiple different Fool's journeys in our life. So you start at the Fool and you work all the way through. For somebody who really wants to work with tarot, I would recommend kind of working with those 22 major arcanas, like really meditating on the cards, trying to embody that card, because all they really are is just archetypes. So that would be a really good way to kind of get used to it and to learn. So that's for the normal tarot cards. I don't have a Rider-Waite deck with me. I thought that I did, but I do not. That's like the typical tarot imagery you see pretty much everywhere, the traditional one. So everyone probably should have at least one like normal Rider-Waite deck. That being said, a lot of people just don't use them when they're reading because they kind of get into a groove of the different ones that they like. So I personally don't really use them very much. I think the only Rider-Waite deck I do use would be like the Golden Art Nouveau, which isn't really even Rider-Waite, but it's the most indicative of the Rider-Waite, I guess, if that makes sense. So that's the one that I use a lot. Also, for beginners, I cannot recommend this deck enough. This is called the Cozy Witch deck. I actually stole Ash's deck because I forgot mine at home. So, Ash, if you're watching, I'm using your cards. You can see there's a lot of like she really loved this deck up, right? Some of the stuff's even fading off it for how much she's using it. So you could tell it's a really good one. What I like about this deck is it's very practical. And it's adorable too. Like the artwork is so cute. So this is one of my favorite cards. In this deck, it's the Three of Pentacles. It's so cute. And I love the little descriptions they'll put at the bottom. So this is why I say it's really good for people who are learning. Reason is too, because a lot of times they'll put like one keyword on the bottom, but that is not good enough to like embody a whole card. So I like these little sayings. It says, what's the saying? Teamwork makes the spell work. So it's talking about obviously, working with other people, kind of joining forces with people who have a similar goal. So that's kind of why I like these cards. They're very, very cute. Artwork's adorable on the back. It's got a little coffee cup. So cups, obviously a candle for, I'm assuming that'd be wands, the little sword for swords, right? And then you have the pentacle for the pentacles, but I just really like the back of it. And then the Hierophant, it says tradition is important, but it doesn't have to be everything. And you can see too that there are younger witches kind of looking up to this older witch for information and for inspiration. So it's kind of talking about, working with somebody who knows better than you, but then also taking what resonates and then moving on. So, and again, I'm just showing these cards more to just explain like how tarot is. Like you'll find these cards in every single tarot deck, if that makes sense. There's always going to be an emperor. There's always going to be a hierophant. The other thing that I really like about these is that they're super, super inclusive. So like this one is the Lover's card, and it's got 2 women there. Not to make assumptions, but 2 women there. Then you've got this one, Queen of Wands. They definitely show like all body types. It's very body positive, very inclusive as far as like people of color, and also for the queer community, for LGBT people. So really, really like this deck. And aside from Rider-Waite, this is probably my recommendation for beginners would be that Cozy Witch deck. It's by Amanda Lovelace. So that's tarot. And I will show a couple more tarot decks too, but just to explain the difference between the Oracle and Tarot. There's another Amanda Lovelace deck, but this is the Create Your Own Magic deck. Believe in Your Own Magic. Don't listen to me. I'm sorry. I knew I was wrong as soon as I said it. It's called Believe in Your Own Magic by Amanda Lovelace. These cards pair so beautifully with the Cozy Witch. These are excellent too if you're reading for like teenagers, reading for people who are a little bit more nervous about the tarot cards and all of that. And also, like I said, just more of a practical application. You don't need a whole lot to understand what these cards are telling you. Imagery is beautiful, artwork's beautiful. So here are some of the Oracle cards, and then I can kind of go over what the difference is. So Oracle does not follow a specific system. There can be any amount of cards in there. The artwork all is different, and the card names are different too. Typically, though, they will be like a one-word thing or a phrase or something, so that and you'll kind of understand what it's trying to say. Oracle's a lot easier to read intuitively. So you don't need to necessarily know anything before you start with your Oracle cards. You're just using what you know personally about life. Whereas Tarot, it can get a little bit dicier. You might want to have a little bit of knowledge or use that guidebook at first. To me, though, I think that trying to read Tarot intuitively definitely assists in learning the cards. Just trusting your gut, going off of what the imagery says. But like this one says expectations. It says don't seek anyone's approval. Now, like I said, I like to pair all the different cards together. So if I was going to get, this card, and then I'd have the Lover's card, and I'm pairing these together, that's going to tell me in my romantic relationships, I need to not have as high of expectations. Don't seek anyone's approval. The only expectations I'm trying to meet are my own, right? So that's kind of how I like to pair the Tarot and Oracle. It helps me to get a better idea of the lens to read the tarot cards through. And that's very similar to how I use the Lenormand. Oh, I love this. This is a phoenix. So it says, how's that for happily ever after? So I kind of like these cards because they're just like a little clever. They're kind of witty. And again, really easy to understand. This is funny. This one's called Bitchfire. It says stand up for yourself. Interesting. But yeah, very, very cool. Love this deck. The guidebook's really cute as well. And yeah, this is just stuff you're going to deal with everyday normal stuff. Everyone thinks a lot of the time that like cards are, they think they're evil or scary or anything, but they're just talking about normal stuff that's happening in everybody's life. There's nothing that is like going to come out that you haven't already seen in your life. If I get the Tower, I'm not really scared because I've been through the Tower. I know what's going to happen. Now at least I have a warning and I can see it through a different lens. So when that explosive moment happens, I can be like, okay, hey, this is working me towards this next thing. I'm learning a lesson instead of just, why is this happening to me? So that's the difference there. Before I get into Lenormand, I'm going to show another example of a tarot and another example of the oracle. This is called the Hush Tarot. I don't really use this deck very often. I do think Seven has this deck and likes it a lot, if I'm remembering correctly. So these ones do follow that same pattern, right? So the same 78 cards, but they are different. These ones I feel are a lot harder to read intuitively, if this makes sense to you. That's why what deck you get is so important. Because it's hard to tell what it is, right? I'm assuming this would be 5 of Cups because it has that little cup at the top, but it's just not super intuitive. So not that I wouldn't recommend this deck, maybe just not for a beginner. The artwork is beautiful though. Like this is the 7 of Cups. Very pretty artwork. Just I don't own this deck. This is a store copy. Just so everyone's like, why are you saying you don't read with it if you have it? Like this one too. Hopefully we're not blocked for showing boobies, but there's no nipple, so hopefully we're okay. But again, this is just another tarot deck. Artwork is completely different, but it's going to follow those same suits. But as you can see, has a completely different vibe than the Cozy Witch one that I showed. So that's just to kind of explain that all tarot decks are different. You might have gotten this tarot deck and been like, this sucks. I hate tarot. I can't read with it. And then you get the Cozy Witch and you're like, oh, this makes sense for me. So don't give up, really find what speaks to you. But then also everybody's different. Like Sierra here. So she's behind the camera. You can't see her, but she would always, you can see her cute little fingernails. Sierra is not a super big tarot person. That's just like not her favorite thing to read with. And she would read with Oracle. And so I looked at her, I said, why don't you try Lenormand? So just give it a shot. And she's very, very good with it. You can tell when somebody just naturally like picks up on something. And that's one of them. Lenormand uses a lot of symbolism. So I forget exactly how many cards. I always forget in Lenormand. 36. It's really hard for me not to sing that song, but I'm not going to. But this one's the Anchor. So this is actually by Dr. Mystical. So he's a friend of the shop. If you feel like you want to support him, you could definitely order a deck from him, order it from us. I think we have a signed copy as well. So really, really cool guy. And he's kind of going through it a little bit. So I'm sure he would appreciate your support. But just to show off some of the cards. So there's 36 of them. They're all going to be the same, and the meanings do not change from deck to deck. So that's how it's similar to tarot. It's actually based off of original playing cards. So just the not the trump cards. So like the suit cards, right? So like there are like 52 card pickup or whatever. So 36 of those are going to be like the little guys, the minors, and that's what Lenormand came from. So the anchor, like think about what an anchor is. It holds you down, right? It's stabilizing. It can be 2 different ways, right? It can either be an anchor's dropped when it's not supposed to be, and it's dragging and dragging and dragging and keeping you from where you need to go. It can be a burden, or the anchor can be something that holds you in place. It anchors you to reality. The way that you're going to read this card is going to depend on the card that you pull next. So I got this star. So that's more positive. That's saying that this anchor will help me to get my hopes and dreams accomplished, if that makes sense. So Lenormand, the cards definitely affect one another a lot more than tarot or oracle would. Okay, this thing's gonna eat me. Sorry, everyone. I was getting so sick of that. But I actually brought my personal grimoire in to go over some of the Lenormand stuff, because
I'd like to add a note that Lenormand works for people that are good with symbolism. So the reason why I struggle with tarot is there's a lot of there's numbers. You start adding numbers into things. For someone who is not a number person as a kid, it was hard for me to figure out combining the numbers with certain things.
And that totally makes sense because
Yeah.
it's like all about numerology. Like
Mhm.
a 5 is bad.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter
If
what
you-
suit.
if
You get a
you-
5 is bad.
If you were an English major or you liked English over math, you might actually pick up Lenormand
Yes.
over people that might have enjoyed math or been not as good with English as they were with math. It's just how brains work.
Yeah,
so.
and that's like interesting. I like that you made that point because this is something I tell clients all the time. Is they come to me and they're like, I really want to open up my psychic abilities, but I have a hard time visualizing. And they're like, I'm not clairvoyant. Like that's because clairvoyance probably is not your number one psychic sense. So if you were a visual learner in school, you're going to be more likely to get your spiritual information by being a visual learner as well. So that
Mhm.
means that clairvoyance, you'll get more visions. It'll be through dreams. Or you could be like me, who is a very much like a verbal learner. I like to write things down. And when I hear things from people, I remember it. So I'm much more clairaudient.
Mhm.
So that's kind of the difference. How you process information in the material world is going to be how you process it in this world, in the metaphysical. So if something doesn't work, try something different. There are
Yeah.
people who love pendulums. That's not my jam. I might use a decision maker, but nobody's wrong.
It's also not to say that you maybe you need to, for example, maybe you're better at Lenormand like me, okay? That's not to say that you can't do tarot or you can't get better with tarot. I've
Right.
learned that doing Lenormand helps me kind of develop psychic ability a little bit more
100%.
and helps with working with intuition, which then makes it easier to maybe take the next step into something a little bit more complex.
100%. And I also think too, a lot of time people rely on the cards a little bit too much.
Mhm.
The way I read is I get information from the cards, but psychic stuff is always going to come first. Like if I hear something or I feel something, I'm going to say that regardless of what the cards say. And I think sometimes people have a hard time with cards because they're trying to force something into a box.
Yeah.
Go with what feels right. I personally don't use spreads when I read tarot cards because I feel like it inhibits my ability to like tell the story that I want to tell. Lenormand, I use a spread, but that's because Lenormand's kind of just like 369. Like what do you know? So I'll kind of show, I don't know if y'all can see it or not.
Yeah, they can.
Okay. So this is my personal grimoire, so excuse how kind of messy it is. This page is okay, but the other ones it's like falling apart. But so if you're reading pairs in Lenormand, it's the subject and the modifier, right? So one and the other. So this does something this way. So if I got a bear, right, which is authority, and then I got mice, that means that authority is taking something away from me, right?
Mhm.
So think about it that way. This always modifies that first card.
Yeah.
Do you have anything you want to add to that?
Oh no, just like for example, like even just going off of authority, when you think of people in your life that have authority, so like your boss, your
Mhm.
parents. So then if you were to get the mice, things that are taken away, things of thievery, it could be, you know, that person in particular taking away like
right.
your joy, something, your free time.
Yeah, exactly. Taking your power away,
Yeah.
expecting more from you. That might be a good time to pull a tarot or oracle card to explain what are you taking. Or you can pull another Lenormand and see if that clarifies it. So that's the 2 cards. The 3, it's this does this way, right? So I might get birds, and I might get mice, and then I might get snake. So that's telling me this little group is taking something away by being untrustworthy and being snake-like. So that's why I really like Lenormand. It's specific. It will answer a specific question. That's why I always pull Lenormand. When I have someone sit down and do a reading, I'll pull 3 Lenormand cards. And then I go from there.
I'm only laughing because I have a friend of mine who, when I do Lenormand for her, she's like, pull me a clarification card. I'm like, this is it.
There is no clarification.
This
It
is
said
it.
what it said.
Yes.
It said what it said. And like I said, it's so literal. Like what my friend got something. I was trying to show her how they work. So I'd gotten like tower, which is like bureaucracy and stuff. I got fish and I got ship. And I said, you're taking a work trip. And she said, girl, I really am. Next weekend. So it's stuff like that. It's super cool. And then there's also like this 5-card Lenormand. So this is that central card. And then these two. I don't really use the 5-card spread, to be honest with you. That gets not confusing, but it just doesn't give me as much information as I would like. Then you have the 9 cards. This is super cool. I don't use it very often, but when I have, it's worked amazingly. So you do the 9 cards. This is what's conscious. This is what's reality, what's actually happening. And then this is what's unconscious. So what they're not noticing. And then the cool part about Lenormand is then you can read it this way. So you read horizontal, but then it's also past, present, future. And you would do the 3 columns instead of rows. So that's what I really like about Lenormand is you can read it so many different ways. What a lot of people will do, which is called, I forget. Oh, the Grand Tableau Lenormand spread, is they put every single Lenormand card out on the table. They spread them all out. And then you want to know about your health? Let me find the tree. What are the cards surrounding that? You want to know about your love life? Here's the heart. What's surrounding that? You want to know about the man in your life? Where's that man card? So that is a really, really cool way to get like an overall life check-in. Don't try and do that in 15 minutes. It is not going to happen. That's a more lengthy reading, okay? But the Grand Tableau is probably the most common way that they use it. One of the other things I wanted to bring up, because I talked about that working with the major arcana. Okay, I'm not going to take credit for this. I got this probably off Tumblr like 10 years ago. So I would totally credit the person that I got these from if I had written it down as 18-year-old Emily, but I did not. So we're just going to, if these are yours, please comment and say thank you. I'm sure that these are probably yoinked from somebody else and plastered all over Tumblr, but I really liked these, so I'm going to say them anyway, but I'm just saying I did not write these. But it's super, super cool the way they say something. So, anyway, so, you know what, rereading these, I don't like them. I'm going to make up my own.
Which,
rereading these, I'm going to make up my own because I don't like them. Okay, like if I was the magician and I wanted to do a meditation or do some kind of journal prompt that had to do with the magician, I would look into my ability to manifest. So I'm going to say, what tools do I have right now that I'm not using? Or what is at my disposal that I can use to get what I want? So something like that. If I were doing the High Priestess and I wanted to meditate on the High Priestess, or journal on it, I would say, in what ways have I ignored my intuition? What is my intuition trying to tell me? Things like that. So journaling on the cards is a really cool way to do it. And what some people do is they'll even spend like a whole week working with each card. So you can really like focus in on it. Doesn't seem like you all have many questions. I'm just chatting away, huh?
Yeah, it's quiet over here.
That's okay. Well, I'll show off my grimoire because my ancestors. Do you guys want to know what my great grandma's name was? Mary Mabuba Mabuli Balam Joseph. and then her dad's name was Nader.
No, it was
Who
not.
did that? I'm talking to you, Annie Samana. Why did you do that? Nader.
That's funny.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if I have more. I do have stuff on the runes in here as well. I don't really read runes, but I use them for spell work. So I'll like carve them into a candle. Like I use the Othala one a lot if I'm honoring my ancestors, stuff like that. I don't think there's much more on tarot. But yeah, basically those are the differences between tarot, oracle, and Lenormand. Like we were saying, if you here are like the meanings for Lenormand too. I do have all these.
I love
down. But if you have not connected with tarot that much, if oracle isn't your jam, try Lenormand. If you want to have more of a system, because like I have a hard time reading with like a bunch of different oracle cards. You know, like with tarot, like I can put 20 out on the thing and I'm totally fine, can read them. If I have 20 different oracle cards, I feel like they contradict each other at a certain point and they're so vague. So that's why I mainly like I might do a reading with tarot and Lenormand and then pull 1 or 2 oracle cards at the end to kind of wrap up the reading, give an overall message that they can leave with. Where there are other people, they'll pull 3 oracle cards in their reading and that takes up the whole 15 minutes and they can really like go deep into it. So that's why I'm saying everybody's so different. So don't put yourself in a box and there's no wrong way. If it works for you and you're reading a certain way and you're getting accurate information that way, it doesn't really matter if it's following the way you're supposed to do it. As long as it's working for you, then it's working. So I will say too, if you are interested in getting a reading from someone who really understands like the history and the archetypes and the astrological influences of all the tarot cards, Nick is very, very good with that. He's an excellent tarot reader. We also have Seven here, who's a great tarot reader, and a ton of other people. I guess I could plug myself on Wednesdays too. I always feel weird doing that, but we have Holly on Tuesdays, and then Saturdays it kind of switches out. But another great way to learn how to read tarot and oracle and Lenormand is watch somebody else read them for you. I have learned so much about that just from watching other readers read, because we are all so different. Like how I mentioned Nick and Seven, we all are very talented in our own right, but read completely different ways. So that's why I say there's no wrong way. There are times where Nick might pull 3 cards and I'm going to pull those exact same 3 cards. I would say it completely differently, but it doesn't mean that we're wrong. We both could be right, but that's just our way of interpreting it. So, yeah, try not to get too hung up on that. I'll give like a minute or 2 for anyone to ask questions if you feel inclined. But other than that, I think we can finish up. For those millennials like me that love Neopets, because I didn't fully talk about this, this is like the theme decks that people will do. Okay, this is literally a Neopets tarot deck. The Fairyland, Fairy Realm. So cute. Now, would I really read with these? I don't know. Do I love them? Yeah. I sure do. Do I regret buying them? No. So yeah, like they'll have different themes and stuff like that. Some of them are more for collecting, some are more for using, but either way, if it makes you happy, buy them. That's my motto. But anyway, thank you all for listening. Feel free, if you're rewatching and I didn't go over something, to send us a message and I will try and get back to you and respond. That being said, I don't respond very much on my personal phone, so we're going to do our best. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.